Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Snowflake Office Hours with Airlines Reporting Corporation, ARC. ARC provides global distribution solutions and data products built on the most comprehensive air travel data. Over the next 30 minutes, we will spend time talking to Mustafa Ghazi, Senior Database Administrator. Mustafa has over 10 years of dedicated database administration experience managing a variety of platforms. He is specifically responsible for architecting and administering ARC's Snowflake environment since it was adopted in early 2018. Mustafa will talk about ARC's journey in evaluating several platforms and explain why they ultimately chose Snowflake. And my name is Janie Liu. I'm a product marketing manager at Snowflake. I will be the moderator for today's event. As always, live questions will be asked at the very end of the session, but please feel free to type them in throughout the duration of Mustafa's talk. As always, please ask any and all questions because no question is off limits. Mustafa, I'm personally looking forward to hearing your story. So without further ado, off to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today, and good afternoon for those on the East Coast. Thank you for joining our session. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll go over an introduction for our company, give you a little bit about our story with Snowflake, and hopefully share some of our experiences that you may find useful in your own scenarios and situations. So I'm a Senior Database Administrator with Airlines Reporting Corporation. We have different offices across the United States. Our headquarters is in Washington, D.C., the Arlington, Virginia area, and we have offices in Louisville, Kentucky, Tampa, and San Juan. So ARC, or Airlines Reporting Corporation, we help airlines and travel agencies connect, grow, and thrive. We are focused on delivering flexible distribution solutions, innovative technology. That is something that we strongly believe in. And we're always providing access to the world's most comprehensive air transaction data. So if we look at 2018, we basically settled more than $94.7 billion. And that was done between more than 235 airlines, as well as more than 12,000 travel agency locations. That is done obviously through providing reliable distribution solutions between our airline carriers and travel agencies. It's important to also note that while the majority of our customers are airline carriers and travel agencies, we do serve other customers in different fields, such as our data is important to, for example, companies or agencies in the education field. We also provide some data products that serve some law enforcement agencies, whether they're local or national to the United States. ARC is a global source of airline data. So last year as well, our data contained information about 295 million passenger trips. That was done between 230 countries and territories, tickets sold in 12,100 agency locations, served on 236 airlines, and traveled between 3,300 airports. Our mission is essentially advancing and unifying the global air travel community. We want to be able to deliver trusted solutions and provide our proven expertise and the flexible technology that we have to serve our customers. So our prior enterprise data warehouse, we basically used Teradata on-prem. It consisted of two main physical data models. We had some attributes that existed in both models, but we also had some attributes that exist in one but not the other. The architecture essentially was a physical cluster that was hosted at ARC's data center. From a function perspective, the enterprise data warehouse serves ARC's business intelligence and analytical needs and requirements. So basically, it powers all of our data products and offerings that we serve either internally for our users or externally for our customers. We realized that there were some areas of improvement as we embarked on a challenge to transform and modernize our environment. Obviously, the data model, we wanted to be able to redesign the data model to better meet the industry. The travel industry is always evolving. Airline carriers are always looking to serve customers in different ways. Travel agencies are always looking to make sure to abide by the airline carriers' regulations and requirements. There's basically an evolving need in the travel industry, and being part of that industry and being in the middle, we wanted to make sure that our technology and essentially our data warehouse is able to keep up with that, with those requirements. We also wanted to improve our performance. So we knew, given the current performance or the existing performance of the on-prem system, we wanted to enhance that significantly. And we didn't want to basically increase that by just a little bit. We wanted to make sure that the performance gain was actually noticeable, not only to us as administrators or managers of the system, but also to our end users and customers internally and externally. As a result, we also wanted to become scalable. So obviously the main challenge with any on-prem system is it typically isn't highly scalable, and if it is, there's a cost associated with that. So we wanted to be sure that we are able to become elastic in our future state to be able to either expand or shrink the system on demand to be able to serve the performance needs and our customers' needs based on the data being presented. Speed to market, which sounds a little bit unique, and I think it probably is in our scenario. So our data serves, like I mentioned, a magnitude of customers. We're always coming up with new ideas for new data products, and it's always important to be able to empower our developers to test new ideas and go through new proof of concepts to be able to essentially vet out a data product idea to see if it's something that we are going to productionize or if it's something that is not going to be worthwhile to pursue. Another thing that we also wanted to make sure that we keep in mind was cost tracking. So obviously, just like the majority of the companies, not everyone follow the same policy, but essentially we are looking to generate revenue and profit. And to be able to track the cost, specifically with data products, that would be something that would be very desirable because that would allow us to calculate the total cost of ownership and obviously in turn calculate net revenues as well. So as a result, we wanted to enhance the business value based on those requirements. So we went through a process to evaluate a number of enterprise data warehouse platforms, and Snowflake was among those. The set of criteria that we went through that is essentially the things that we knew that we wanted to improve. So performance, we wanted to be able to enhance that, and Snowflake was able to provide that because it gives us the ability to separate the workloads using separate virtual warehouses. Those warehouses could vary in size, which we are using that indeed, not to mention the ability to resize an existing warehouse to accommodate a specific workload for a short period of time or an extended period of time, and then resizing that warehouse again. Another thing was for the virtual warehouse elasticity and scalability. So obviously you can resize that warehouse, but not only in the what's generally referred to as a T-shirt size to enhance performance, but also the ability to provision a multi-cluster warehouse to accommodate high concurrency needs for the data product that we're working with. That could mean that essentially we could serve a large number of our users or customers without having to go through the typical needs that we would with an on-prem system. Zero copy clones, it was kind of the answer to our prayers, the ability to take a production data set and essentially clone it down in a matter of seconds to provide a data stack for our developers to perform a proof of concept for an idea that they are vetting out for a new data product, and then essentially being able to test that idea and decide if that is something that we want to pursue or if we should be looking somewhere else. It reduced the development time significantly. It allowed us to reduce the administration side of it as well. And just like you would in a typical, unlike what you would have to do in a typical enterprise data warehouse platform where you would have to essentially spend a little bit extra or make sure you accommodate for the storage, find your backups, and be able to restore those to create an environment that could or may not be the full copy of your production data or a different development system. To be able to simply test an idea, we can do that in Snowflake in a matter of seconds, and there's no additional cost for the storage side of it, because essentially it's a zero copy clone based on that feature that they provide. Cost enhancements, so obviously given the fact that we are able to use different virtual warehouses for different workloads, we can in turn calculate that cost at a granular level to allow us to calculate the total cost of ownership and the net revenues for a particular data product. And that kind of sums up the slides that I have, so we'll open it up for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Mustafa. And throughout your talk, we've had a handful of questions coming in, so I've done my best to categorize them. I'll start off with this question because we've had multiple people ask this question, and I also wanted to highlight a point that you brought up. So you mentioned that you wanted to make sure the performance gain was noticeable, not just to you guys, but really to the end users and customers, both internally and externally. I think that's such an important point because we end up just thinking about how it's going to impact us in the immediate term, but there's so many downstream effects where there's a lot of performance gains, not just in terms of because you separated virtual workloads, but maybe the queries ran faster or they were able to get rid of the reports faster. So that was a great point that you brought up. So related to this, we had multiple questions coming in. So really, how has performance changed since you switched from your on-prem system to Snowflake is the first part. And what are some of the KPIs that you use to monitor that?
So when we first embarked on the transformation efforts, we wanted to evaluate the systems that we had on hand to basically decide on which system we were going to go with. Obviously, we chose Snowflake. But to give you an idea, we had workloads that historically speaking ran, and I'll just throw some numbers, basically in 18, 20 minutes on an older system that ran in seconds in Snowflake. And we tried to use a cost for cost comparison because obviously Snowflake's unique architecture, you can't really compare processing power to processing power. You can kind of guess what each size of virtual warehouse translates to as far as the number of CPUs or the amount of memory it has. So you can't really compare it for a typical on-prem system. But what you can for sure is compare what you're spending here versus what you could be spending with a different system. And using a cost like-for-like model to compare, we're able to essentially reduce the execution times for our workloads by testing a number of different varieties. For example, we tested some weekly exports that we typically do, daily exports that we do, a couple of reports, an ETL workload, as well as an ad hoc query that typically is ran by some of our users on the on-prem system. And the results in comparing all platforms weighed in Snowflake's favor significantly.
Excellent. Thank you, Mustafa. Super helpful. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'm just going to take this in chunks. So a lot of questions came in about the different connections to different tools. So let's just think about on the left-hand side, you have operational data stores. And then in the middle, you have Snowflake. On the right-hand side, you have all the analytics, Tableau, and Looker, and a lot of the other BI analytics tools that you can connect to. So this question specifically is about on the left-hand side. So really, what tools do you use for data ingestion, data prep, ETL? What are some of the things that we should be watching out for, and what do you use specifically?
Part of our modernization strategy is also to create a data lake on Amazon, which Snowflake plays a big part in that as well. But for the ingestion piece of it, we really use, like Talent, for example, is one of our ETL tools. But we also tend to leverage SnowSQL to basically load our files from S3 directly into Snowflake. That's on the ingestion side of things. So we have Talent, and then we also leverage SnowSQL quite extensively. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
So on the right-hand side, you have your BI. What do you use? And then related to that, maybe generally, what do you use for overall data governance?
So for the BI side of things, we're leveraging Tableau to serve our customers. And as far as data governance, we are in the process of kind of transitioning from Talent Metadata Manager, which got rebranded, to possibly a different solution, but there hasn't been a decision on that yet.
Excellent. Thank you, Mustafa. And then a couple of other questions related to this in terms of, so we talk about machine learning and data modeling. So are you using any type of machine learning systems to analyze the data? If so, does it work well with Snowflake?
Don't think we're using any of that yet. So part of the process as we kind of went through the storyline, we're not doing a typical lift and shift. So we're redesigning our current data model to basically move it over to Snowflake. So just because we don't use machine learning today, that doesn't mean that we might not be using it in the next couple of months, basically.
Gotcha. There's another question that came in, which I thought was really interesting. So you bring in a lot of information through your through SnowSQL and Talent. So are the data sources actually on cloud or are they on-prem? If they are on-prem, how are you actually integrating with Snowflake?
The data sources essentially consist of files that are transferred to us from our external customers, which could be a travel agency or an airline carrier. We use a Sterling file gateway to basically deliver those files to an on-prem system, and then we leverage an Amazon storage gateway to basically land that on S3 to be able to load that in turn into Snowflake.
Excellent. Now let's shift gears over to the product. So a couple questions came in related to zero-copy clone. So given your 295 million customers, how do you handle on-prem and Snowflake data with zero-copy clones is the first part, and we'll get to the second part after that.
So the on-prem data is really on the older data model, which essentially some of it is still being served as it gets transitioned into Snowflake's new environment, as we call it. So we haven't really ran into a need where we have to basically leverage the on-prem data for a new data product. Because as we're going through the transformation efforts, we're essentially, like I said, redesigning the data model, putting it on Snowflake, and then once it's there, for those products that did get migrated to future state, we're able to leverage zero-copy clones to essentially vet out new ideas and proof of concepts.
Great. And then related to that is how frequently are you creating these zero-copy clones?
It really varies. So obviously, we have different data marts on Snowflake that serves our different data products. Depending on the need, we could have clones that get created weekly, and in some cases, we have clones that get created on demand and then basically destroyed or deleted or dropped after the need is no longer there. Great.
So let's shift gears again to another area, which is competition and other solutions. So the first question is, what products besides Snowflake had you evaluated, and what particular features above and beyond what you shared in your presentation made you choose Snowflake?
So obviously, as mentioned before, we come from a Teradata on-prem system. We evaluated Teradata IntelliCloud on AWS. We also evaluated another cloud-based data warehouse provided by one of the largest cloud provider. And I don't want to mention it by name, obviously, because there's partnership between that cloud provider and Snowflake. And obviously, we evaluated Snowflake. But given the comparison between the three, which would be Snowflake, the other cloud-based data warehouse solution, and Teradata IntelliCloud on AWS, Snowflake came ahead of the pack by a significant lead as well.
Excellent. Good to know. There's a lot of sensitivity around partnerships, so I think you handled that very well. So let's take a look at a little deeper into the environment that you are in. Just as a ballpark, how many warehouses running? I know it varies, but how many warehouses are you typically running at any given time, and what sizes do you typically have them at?
So we have sizes that vary from X small all the way to 2X large. And as far as any given point in time, it really does vary. Sometimes of the day we have one or two warehouses running, and in some cases we have more than probably 15 that are running at the same time. I think in total we have about 40 virtual warehouses currently, but that number obviously can increase as we migrate the remainder of our environment from our legacy system to Snowflake.
Gotcha. Mustafa, I'm going to have to go back to the previous question because there's a lot of questions asking you to double click into this. So we talked about other cloud platforms, but this question in particular was when you talk about coming out ahead, what does that really mean? What are some of the criteria and metrics that you use to judge the success?
Sure. So the criteria is essentially what we were talking about, I think, in the previous slide, which we wanted to increase performance. We wanted to be elastic and scalable for our customers. We also wanted to have speed to market, is what we called it, and we wanted to be able to track cost. So as we went through the process of evaluating all three platforms, we kept those requirements in our minds and basically went through the process of vetting out every single platform. Performance, Snowflake came ahead by a significant lead as far as performance. Like I mentioned, it's kind of hard to compare compute capacity as far as number of CPUs or the size of memory, but you can also compare it cost for cost. And then in turn, once that is decided or once you see those significant performance gains, you're able to adjust your sizing in Snowflake accordingly to, in turn, save cost. So scalability, we had some not as quick experience as far as being able to elastically expand the system with the other systems that we evaluated. A lot of times the data is sliced among different nodes within the cluster, and obviously the data has to be redistributed among the nodes once you resize the system, whether you're sizing up or sizing down. Snowflake doesn't obviously do that. You can actually resize a virtual warehouse in a matter of seconds, if not milliseconds. So that takes care of the scalability, and then the speed to market with most of the other platforms. Obviously, it's just like the typical on-prem system, so you have to accommodate for your data stack that you're trying to spin, figure out which data sets you're going to be copying to create a new development area for your proof of concept. And then obviously cost tracking, you're not able to really calculate the cost at a granular level because everything is within one system unless you decide to spin multiple instances of that particular platform, which could prove to be costly.
Excellent. And then this is a follow-up question as well. So you talked about the criteria that you use, but what about when you saw migrating from on-prem to cloud, where did Snowflake come ahead in terms of its ability to quickly get environments over to Snowflake as opposed to other cloud platforms?
So Snowflake, obviously, the ability to provision those warehouses instantly on the fly, and then basically the ability to create external stages where you're able to map your S3 buckets and start loading your data from S3. That will obviously provided a lot of ease of use for us to be able to start loading our data into Snowflake. And then the performance gain, we saw that from the get-go as well, just from the first day.
That's so great to hear. Well, let's shift gears again one more time, and let's look to the future. So long term, what do you view as your split between on-prem and cloud? For those folks who are looking for a hybrid cloud environment, is that a tenable solution?
I think absolutely. I think it would provide you with a solid choice for a cloud-based enterprise data warehouse platform. So Snowflake does provide also another feature that we're using with Snowflake is private link, which is really an AWS feature, but that allows you to tie your virtual private clouds to Snowflake directly using AWS's backend data center. So that could also be something that you might want to think about as you tie your on-prem system to the cloud. Snowflake, like I mentioned, it's a solid platform. We've seen 100% positive feedback from our users internally and externally. Our data products is able to be more efficient, more cost-effective, as well as more performant.
Excellent. I like that you brought up the private link, the connectivity. So one of the questions that we always get is really, so I'm looking at Snowflake, I hear great things about it, and I want to implement it, but how quickly is it for my team to get up to speed? So this question was, how has the learning curve been for your internal users and developers?
I can speak to this being a technical person myself. So one of the things that I really commend Snowflake on is the fact that they have a very thorough documentation. The user groups and the forums are gaining traction more and more every day. There's a lot more participation in there than when we first started in 2018. So it does provide the documentation in conjunction with the community, the online community, does provide a significant amount of resources that could help you. Snowflake as a platform is really easy to understand once you spend just a little bit of time and try to go through the documentation and try to find out what works out for your requirements and what works out for your needs. Once your account is set up with your account manager or even the trial account that you could get on Snowflake's website, you're up and running. There's no servers to spend. There's no installations that you have to do in your data center. You're essentially up and running on the cloud, and you could start loading your data from any S3 bucket that you could map into Snowflake. So it's really easy to use. Just kind of follow through the documentation. One area that I'll mention on the documentation page, the Snowflake team does provide a magnitude of tutorials, and some of them are even video-based, that could help you get up and running a lot quickly, and some of it goes through loading data, unloading data from Snowflake, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. Related to this, Mustafa, the question was really, how has your experience been with Snowflake support?
As a technical person, that's usually one of the things that I am apprehensive about, but I'm happy to report that our experience with support has been phenomenal. We have, I'll mention this, we have discovered bugs here and there, for example, with the web UI or those sort of things, and we've always reported them. They've been very receptive. We've also requested a lot of feature enhancements here and there, and almost, I probably would say every single time, the bug was either resolved in a fairly timely manner, or the feature enhancement was basically accepted. And as long as it improves on the system, not just from a single customer perspective, but also as a platform, they're always very receptive. So very responsive, very knowledgeable, and basically one of the best supports that I've had in my experience.
Wow, that's great to hear. Thanks for those words. You talked about feature enhancements, Mustafa, and I wanted to get to this question because we get a lot of people ask the same question. It's really about query optimization. So how much effort did you specifically put in to tune the SQL statements into Snowflake to achieve optimal performance? What did you do, and what are some of the things that you're looking to do to optimize query performance?
So Snowflake is a really different, unique architecture in comparison to other platforms. Typically, in a typical database platform, you have knobs to tune to be able to adjust your system to basically improve on query execution. And obviously, a bad SQL is a bad SQL wherever you run it. But at the same time, some systems could perform better than other systems, even with a bad SQL. And that's really has been the case. From an administration standpoint, as far as Snowflake goes, the administration responsibilities, specifically as it relates to tuning, shifts a little bit. So you don't have a lot of tunes and knobs and things and dials to tune your system to accommodate for query performance. Obviously, you can improve on your query tuning as far as the actual SQL text itself, just with general SQL best practices. But the shift kind of goes towards your virtual warehouses, how they are operating. Do you have the sizing appropriate for the workload that is running on that particular warehouse? Is there a spilling that's happening for the queries? Is the warehouse overworked? Is it queuing workloads? Do you need to resize it to a larger size, or do you need to provision a multi-cluster to accommodate for concurrency loads. That's kind of where the tuning responsibilities shift from a typical database platform. Hopefully that answers that question, because I know that was one of the things that were near and dear to my heart as we embrace Snowflake.
Excellent. And I guess related to that comes with the ability to size up and size down, size up and out. How has the pricing actually worked for you guys? Are you seeing a big reduction? Are you seeing more people being more efficient? Talk to us about the impact of the pricing model from Snowflake.
Absolutely. So obviously, cost is calculated based on Snowflake credits. Snowflake credits, that is something that is negotiated between you and your account manager as you sign up with Snowflake. But based on your size and the number of clusters that you have, you get charged for the number of Snowflake credits for that particular warehouse size. We did see a significant reduction in the cost as far as Snowflake goes. One of the two things that I'll mention, and I know Snowflake themselves also mention this over and over again, but the ability to set the virtual warehouses to auto-suspend and auto-resume significantly reduces the operational cost. So as you provision a virtual warehouse in Snowflake, you don't have to have that virtual warehouses up and running all the time to be waiting for queries, because that does incur charges. But with the auto-suspend and auto-resume, all you have to do is fire up your query once you've selected your warehouse, and if the warehouse is set for auto-resume, within milliseconds or seconds, that warehouse is basically automatically resumed and starts to process your query. So that does reduce the cost. So not to mention, obviously, what you could generally be achieving on an on-prem system could simply be executed in less time in a smaller virtual warehouse in Snowflake.
Excellent. And we like to say office hours, no questions off limits. So let's get to this one before we wrap up. What features could Snowflake offer to make the product even more compelling for you guys?
One of the things that we have not officially started using yet, but we are architecting our environment to be accommodating to that feature as we finish our transformation efforts to future state, is data sharing. We foresee a significant need and a significant use case for that among our customers. So obviously, being an air travel data-focused company, we not only receive data from our customers, but we also provide our customers with data. And we foresee the ability to be able to share our data seamlessly and securely with our external customers to be something that will provide significant value as we move forward into our future state.
Excellent. Thank you, Mustafa. Super helpful. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll see you at the next office hours in 2 weeks. And special thanks to Mustafa for your insights. The slide deck and recording will be made available to all registrants and attendees. And we hope you have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.